So, got a frame, our swing arm, box of parts, suspension, engine, tank, all of our little goodies. Got my cameras, notepad. We're gonna weigh this bike. Pretty much every major component. I'm gonna sit down, we're gonna weigh it. I think this will be kind of interesting. It's fun to figure out where all the weight comes from in dirt bikes in each model, and also kind of, as we do more and more of these videos, kind of figure out where the difference in weight is between each machine. I know I've had people ask me all the time, like, how is a KTM as light as it is? How does a Suzuki weigh as much as it is? We won't be answering that today, but we'll at least click off one on the list to kind of figure out what exactly weighs maybe more than you think or what weighs less than what you think. So we'll get started. Lift up our frame. "20 pounds, 14 ounces. Frame here, pretty much everything has been removed from it. If you want to look it over, the only thing left that I basically did not take off the frame is the races and the studs for the engine mount. Other than that, all the plugs, all the clips for the harnesses have all been removed. Moving on to the swing arm. The only thing I left in it is the bearings, which I'll pull later, but other than that, the rest of the hardware is out. So I quickly realized we're going to have to speed things up here a little bit. Originally, I wanted to do this video and show each item on the bike as part of the video weighing it, but we would be sitting here for a solid 45 minutes. So we're going to fast forward a little bit through this. I've got some weight charts at the end that we can look over. They're zoomed in, so you can pause, take your time, and go through everything. But I thought it'd be fun to weigh this because I am going to change quite a few things when I put this bike back together, and I want to see where exactly we can lose weight. I'll probably go back through and redo some of the parts though, because the scale you can see in the video I picked up at Harbor Freight, and it's not the most precise. Basically, it has a plus or minus 0.2 on the ounces, so you'll see on the chart everything is pretty much rounded up by 0.2 of an ounce. So good enough to at least get me a base point of where we're at. And I weighed basically everything on the bike except for some of the just fine nuts and bolts, some of the basic hardware, the bars, the grips, a few things like that. As you'll see with the final chart, we basically came in with I basically weighed within around 11 pounds of what the entire bike weighs, because I have weighed this bike dry and full of fuel, and I have those on the weight chart. So kind of the other cool part was just being able to see really where the weight is on the bike, and also maybe how light some things are and how heavy some things are. Because when we build the bike, when I do the project with this one, there will be certain things that are definitely going to gain weight. And I think some people have a misconstrued thought of like a factory race bike. Oh, it's got to be 15 or 20 pounds lighter. Not really. A, titanium does not trim off as much as you would think. And number two, there are certain things they add to the bike that definitely add weight. And that's what we're going to see as I put this thing together when we're at this tail end of the project, is a few items I'm going to focus on and see where we can cut. But there's definitely going to be things we're going to add to the bike that might be surprising what our total ends up being. Biggest one is I'm anodizing the frame and swing arm, so I'm kind of curious to see what that coating and all weighs to those items. But we're finally here to the weight charts. Don't worry about this. We're going to zoom in a little bit tighter here in a second, but there's the base weight. Here we go. We got our dry weight now. Wet weight this year was 231 pounds, and the wet weight was 242 when I weighed this bike for a shootout. The bike is actually slightly heavier than the 18. They did add electric start, a hydro clutch, and spring forks. They did everything they could with the engine cases and the frame and everything to bring back down the weight. They came really close, but honestly, when you go from an air fork to a spring fork, you're typically putting almost 3 pounds back on the bike. So that was kind of where the big penalty came back. I got to look again. I think the final weight ended up being like 1.5 pounds or 2 heavier than last year's bike. So they did a really good job of adding on a lot of features people would like without really getting that much of a penalty. And it's actually the lightest of the Japanese 450s out of the box. The only thing that's lighter than this is the KTM and Husky 450 motocross bikes for that specific CC range. But as you can see, the frame is almost 21 pounds. Swing arm 8.5 pounds, shock with spring 8.5 pounds. Your forks are a little bit different weight because of the lug on the left side fork having the brake caliper on it. Fuel tank was weighed dried, but with the fuel pump installed still in it, but of course there's no fuel in it when I weighed it. Subframe was fully disassembled, just frame, like battery, all the electronics were taken out of it. Front brake system means basically everything. I took the front brake master cylinder off. It still has the hose and the caliper hook to it, and then same with the rear brake. That's why I labeled it as system. Head pipe with guard. The engine was weighed with the oil still in it, and it has a little bit of the wiring connected to it, just that goes to the stator. I took the hydraulic clutch actuation cylinder piece off of it, but as you can probably see in one part of the video, the engine's about as stripped down as it you know, pretty close to stripped down. There's a couple little things. I have some plastic engine plugs in it to cover it, so it's not the most precise. It might be within a couple ounces off of what most people consider a dry engine, but pretty close. Hydro clutch system. Big one is wheels and tires. As you upgrade rims, you actually quite often can end up with heavier setup. So that's kind of a unique one to see as we build the bike, is where we actually end up in that regard. Because I think it would surprise people a lot of times. You get stronger, better wheels, and they end up actually being heavier pretty often. The seat's a place we can trim weight. We're going to do a different foam on there that some of the race teams use. The electrical is pretty much all the wiring harness. Not much we can do there. Foot pegs and hardware. This one is a little lighter than I thought. There's not a lot of room. We can cut some weight there with tie, but not a ton. Right, left rears. Your axle weights, I'm going to try to get some tie units of those, but as you can see, they're already not quite that, they're not that heavy, so there's not that much room to trim. But at the end, going down, we end up at 219 pounds and 7.6 ounces is what I roughly had weighed out on this bike. Like I said, I'm missing stuff like the handlebars, the grips, and all the hardware left. So I'm within 12 pounds of what the dry weight of the bike is by weighing a lot of parts individually. So like I said, I think a lot of people get a misidea of how big of a difference you can make on the weight of these bikes. I've heard people basically say, oh, like, you know, you throw a tie kit on this bike and it's going to be 15 pounds lighter. There isn't that much wiggle room. And like I said, when we get into the building phase of this bike, I'm going to go back through. I actually ordered a more precise scale, and we're going to get a little bit better idea of what some of these items weigh. But the other thing, too, is I'm tearing down a 125 this week, and I'm going to go through and do the same video to that. It's a YZ 125. And pretty much any major project bike I do over the next couple of years will be kind of doing the same thing. So I'm hoping as we do more and more of these, especially with like the main 450s and 250s, you can start to get an idea of where the weight on these bikes really is, and where some manufacturers are shaving weight and where some of them are getting their porkiness from, where they're kind of tacking on the extra pounds. But if you like this, if you have any suggestions or questions about what I weighed or any of the things basically on this chart, drop them in the comment section below. I'd be glad to answer them. And if you like the content you're seeing here, make sure you hit subscribe. Thanks for watching.